You're listening in on an animated discussion about Superman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from the Cinematropolis.com. And today's topic is My Girl. Joshua, I know we always like to start these episodes out by talking about designs, and obviously we got to talk about Lana Lang, also known as Lana Lang. I watched Smallville, so
it's very variable. It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. Okay, well, I just got to get this out of the way. The first thing I noticed about Lana's design is, wow, cool dress. Second thing I noticed is, whoa, why is this cartoon super male gazy? A good thing it's coming from Lex's perspective. So he's the bad guy, he's sleazy. Okay, we're totally on board. But wait, the rest of the episode's also kind of sleazy and not great towards women. Ooh, not good. Not good at all.
I agree completely, and for anyone who does not want to hear me rant about the casual misogyny of this episode of Superman the Animated Series, skip ahead 5 minutes or so. I should be done by then, and we'll start talking about the redesign. But the fact of the matter is that there is some pretty low-key, but nevertheless constant woman-on-woman violence in this episode. It's gross. Lois finds out that Lex, a super criminal that she knows is kind of abusive and manipulative and controlling and is also, by the way, a giant criminal. She finds out that he's got a new girlfriend, and when she says to herself, I wonder if I should tell her, she decides, nah, it's super callous, and I feel very out of character for Lois Lane. Lois Lane is not going to swoop in and save that woman, but Lois Lane would have a conversation with that woman because Lex is a danger to women, and she knows that firsthand. That's the first thing. Secondly, Mercy Graves is jealous of Lana, and she is so jealous of Lana, she is happy to murder her. Like to the point where at the first part of the episode, Lex has to be like, would you chill out and stop trying to murder my girlfriend? It is gross. Like, it's not okay. Now, look, the fashion world is very problematic as far as the expectations it sets for women. And Lana plays into that with comments like, everything is real, boys. And it's just, that's gross. And it ties into Lex's male gaze, which I agree with you would actually be spectacular coming from Lex's point of view if it weren't for the rest of this episode also being terrible to women.
I just want to point out that, listen, the male gaze is a thing that you see in a lot of movies where the cinematographer, the guy filming, is doing a thing. It's intentional to some extent, but it's a lot, I'll just put it this way, it's a lot easier to do in a live action film where you're just doing a simple pan up and down. When you do it in animation, though, that's a very intentional choice. So
yes.
And I don't think the episode really does a lot to critique Lex on that front in any way, other than that he's just inherently the bad guy.
That is correct. And part of that for the episode is also that there is a lot of assumption that women are stupid. Clark does not understand why Lana can recognize him despite the fact that she's known him since birth and saw him do super stuff. Lex assumes that Lana is an idiot and he lays this completely obvious trap in front of her. And as far as the script is concerned, Lana is exactly stupid enough to fall for it. And Clark allows her to be used as bait, even though he knows it's a setup. Gross and more gross. And at the very end, it is suggested that Lana and Lois are in competition for Clark's affections, which does have some history in the comic books, but it's not good. And even though Lois has zero romantic interest in Clark Kent, and at this point only has nominal romantic interest in Superman, gross. A woman can exist separate from a man, for God's sake, and if there's one woman in the world that can do it, it's Lois Lane. Come on. At the end of the day, this is an episode that quietly reinforces that women are only good for one thing and that they are all in direct cutthroat competition with one another, and it is not a good look. I do not like this episode. I do not like the messages that this episode has. That said, there are a couple of decent things we can talk about.
Hey, man. That's real. Patriarchy is real. Turning women against each other. Go watch, if you want to go watch a movie about the fashion industry that's on that topic that's also screwed up, you can go watch The Neon Demon. Oh, wait, jumping ahead. I didn't even think about that as an alternate media recommendation until this exact moment, so.
Bonus alternate media recommendation, fans. Okay, so that's me and my rant about misogyny over. Let's talk about how Lana looks, the look of Lana Lang in this episode. Caleb, I'm going to tip my hand right away. I am confused why they decided to make her a fashion designer. That doesn't really have any comic book roots that I can imagine, but it's a good choice, and they absolutely kill it with her fits. I mean, come on.
Listen, they get to draw a sexy woman for the whole episode. That's my take, but, you know.
That's true. But the outfit that she wears to the actual fashion show is as good as any of Lois's gowns. Right?
Right.
And then her day-to-day look is so good. It's very simple black and white. It actually looks very practical as day wear while also being much more fashionable and totally different from something like Lois's skirt and blazer look, right?
Yeah.
Like Lois looks like fashionable businesswoman and Lana looks like fashionable fashionista. And I'm very, yes, all the problems with how they look at her aside, I think they absolutely kill every single design they have for her.
Yeah. No. She is consistently looking very, very fashionable and definitely like a person who is a fashion designer. So yeah. I got it. I think it's good.
Now, I want to talk about the fact that Clark Kent is in a tuxedo, and I want to mention that for exactly two reasons. One is when we've had casual Clark, it was so lazy and stupid, so at least they can put him in a tuxedo. And the second reason is I mostly want to talk about Lois Lane at the fashion show, and it felt like it wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention that at least Clark put a tuxedo on. So
they put in the extra work for that tuxedo. It was so complicated.
Yeah, well, exactly. But nevertheless, how about Lois's outfit at the fashion show, right?
Listen, Joshua, I think we need to carve out a segment of the show every week where you talk about Lois's outfit, because this is a consistent trend. And this is not a critique. I just think it's fun. Every time she's got a new outfit, you've got thoughts. And I had thought it looked cool, but you clearly are into it more than me. So I think it's fun.
I think the thing that it does for me, and to show that not every single choice that this show makes is automatically bad when it comes to women, because I think it is a great thing that they put the effort into giving so many different looks to Lois Lane.
Yeah. That's true.
We know animation is supposed to be done on the cheap. Putting people in the exact same outfit so that you can reuse cells and stuff is definitely a thing that happens. I mean, we're seeing it with like Clark Kent and stuff like that, right? Like he's always in this business outfit. You know, Superman's easy. He's always in this thing. But Lois changes depending on where she is. Her 2 daytime looks are phenomenal. She has a great gown when we see her with Bruce Wayne. She has, if anything, a more sort of complicated, a more Byzantine gown in this episode with the fashion show. I just think it's a really great thing that they give that to Lois Lane, but they don't make it a huge part of her personality. You know what I mean? She doesn't have a bunch of outfits because it's the girly thing to have a bunch of outfits. She has a bunch of outfits because that's how professional women operate without even thinking about it.
Joshua, I really like I really like the point that this show does give the effort to Lois for having a different outfit every week without it actually informing like her persona too much. Part of her persona is that she's just very fashionable. So I think that's a good note. And moving on from Lois's fashion of the episode, let's move on to the crook of the episode this week. Now, as listeners who caught last week's episode, never fear, where I made a joke about how they're adding these like crooks or cronies or lieutenants who are weirdly unique, have like unique voice actors and very distinctive designs, but never show up. Well, we got another one this week. This week, his name is Elin. Elin is a generic crooked arms dealer, but like just sleazy sounding and sleazy looking enough to be fun, I guess.
Yes, he really does stand out, I think, at the level of sleaze that he brings to the table. And some of that's the look, but the most of it is really his voice acting.
Yeah, no, 100% the voice acting. So, no, and I don't really know much about the voice actors. Voiced by Larry Drake. The only thing I think it's fun, worth noting is that Joshua and I are both based in Oklahoma, and he's a Tulsa native voice actor, so that's kind of a cool note. So, the late Larry Drake, I should add. But I think he does a very commendable job making you really feel the slime coming off this guy. Like, I'm going to bury you in lead.
Right.
It's just a little...
So that's 2 episodes in a row, friends. Be on the lookout for Crook of the Episode. It's a thing we're going to keep looking at as we go.
It's weirdly trending, and I didn't realize going in how much of a trend this is. And I think even in the first couple of Superman episodes, you pointed out some characters. You're like, oh, this guy's great. He might be back. I think they give him an original design. He might be back. Nope, not back yet.
No, I don't think so. we will never see spiders like again, and Elon is proof of it.
Exactly. Yeah, every episode's got a spider. So, Joshua, I just have to say, moving on from that point, and I've talked about this on the show at length, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I'm a Smallville fan. I watched the whole show from season 1 to season 10, and let me tell you, there was only 30 to maybe, if I'm being generous, 35% of that show that I loved. The other, 65 to 70 I hated. Because it was all the dumb soap opera, all the dumb love triangles, quadrangles, or quintrangles, or whatever was going on, and all the back and forth. And a lot of it was Lex, especially when it comes to Lana Lang. She's Lana in that show, Lana in this show. The two, both Lex and Clark, constantly fighting over her all the time, and how that drove so much of the plot, and it always made Lana look really bad. Always look really bad. And it's a shame because Kristen Crook was a great actress, and I think they tried to do some interesting things with her here and there, but at the end of the day, not really a favorably written character, I would say. That I would, just very tropey and not in a endearing way either. In my experience, which isn't limited, I haven't read a ton of comics with Lana Lang in it. And I have not seen her utilized effectively in too much Superman media outside of Smallville, Superman the Animated Series, and I think it's Superman 3. I think she's in that one. She just generally isn't portrayed as a particularly empowered character. Now, that's not to say there aren't empowered versions out there, but anytime I see Lana Lang show up, I'm always a little... this is gonna be
the hackles raised. How's this gonna go?
This is gonna be a Lana story, isn't it? And the Lana stories always comprise of very similar beats. This guy's in love with Lana. Clark's in love with Lana. They're gonna fight over her. She's gonna pit them against each other sometimes, or side with one or the other time. It's just never good. It's never good. It always makes it look bad. So I'm saying a lot to say I love a lot about Smallville. But you know what? This episode is the 65 to 70% of the episode of Smallville that I hated, all boiled into 20 minutes. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. I really don't like this episode, even with a couple of nice touches here and there. I know Superman, we found out, can apparently absorb lead into his back and he's okay. I don't know. But outside of that, this is just not my favorite. I will say, from my perspective though, silver lining, I would say one positive that I do take away from this episode is that this does highlight how possessive, controlling, and jealous Lex Luthor is. Now,
yes.
I think this is something that we see in all of his romances on the screen, almost always, but it's not exclusive to his romances that this is the thing, because at the end of the day, he is jealous and envious of Superman and is wanting to control Metropolis in the same way he tries to control his romantic interests. So I think that, again, it comes at, but here's the thing, I like that it does that. It comes at the great cost of Lana Lang as a character in both Smallville and in this episode. But I do think that is a trait about him that is an identifying trait of Lex Luthor, and also an Achilles heel as well. And I think this episode does do a good job at showcasing that at the end of the day, his jealousy and desire to control is going to outweigh his affection for Lana Lang.
Well, I think you hit on a bunch of really cool stuff there. So let me give a little bit of comic book background on Lana. I'm not going to go super into it, but she was introduced originally in the Superboy comic to basically fill the role that Lois had in the Superman comic. Like the person who's very interested in Superboy, but not that interested in Clark, but also thinks they're the same person and spends a lot of time trying to prove that. She was basically like repurposing those plots, but in high school. Okay. And when they introduced her into the adult Superman's book, she instantly just became the third point, actually the fourth point in a love quadrilateral, because let's remember, Clark loves Lois, Clark loves Lana, Lana doesn't love Clark, Lana doesn't love Clark, Lois doesn't love Clark, but they all love Superman except for Clark, who thinks Superman's just in his way. Like that was literally her whole deal in the comics for years. There have been, for decades, if I'm honest, there have been much better representations of her, but nothing that I feel like I need to go point you at. You know what I mean? Like she hasn't always been that character, but she's been that character the vast majority of the time. And what I love you bringing up about Lex here is I will take like half a step further from what you said. And I will say the reason that Lex treats his love interests the same as he treats Metropolis is because they're all just possessions to him.
Yes.
Like 100%.
100%.
Yeah. And no one else is allowed to play with Lex's toys. And I love all of that. The thing that I don't like, as far as all of those lines kind of crisscrossing one another in this episode, is how dumb they make Clark Kent about his secret identity. Just bone-jarring stupid the entire time. Why, I ask you, would Superman go visit Lana in a way that would draw attention to the whole thing when Clark Kent, high school sweetheart, could go see her and arouse no suspicion? Right?
Correct.
They even have a moonlight walk in the park together as Lana and Superman. All of this is the script needing Lex to find out. But let me ask you something, Caleb. We're talking about how Lex doesn't like anybody to have his stuff, and he especially doesn't like Superman to have his stuff. But I kind of think that if he'd gotten that jealous about Clark Kent, that would have actually shown even more how just venal and jealous he is. He's even threatened by Clark Kent.
By small town farm boy made returned reporter as a threat to his romantic. Oh yeah, he is highly insecure of that relationship because deep down it is a possession, and he knows that the affection, he feels like he is buying that affection versus it being genuine. So he is extremely insecure anytime she's talking to someone else. So seeing Lana Lang talking to high school sweetheart or high school friend even Clark Kent, Lex Luthor's gonna be like, competition, can't have that. This guy, she's leaving me,
Yeah, and that would have been so much more interesting and less obvious than him being upset about Superman, I think. It also covers Clark's butt at the end, because if they were like, we thought that what are you doing here in this lead factory? And he'd be like, Clark went to Central City to cover that one, but he called me and asked me to look after this. Like, it covers all the bases. Anyway, I don't understand why Clark Kent is so dumb with his secret identity in this, except for the script needing it. Similarly, I really like the action set pieces in this episode, but they're also kind of dumb.
Joshua, wait, what are you talking about? Is it, are we talking about here how they do the whole good old switch the limo driver routine, or the fact that it's followed by the good old, I'm going to tie you up, put you in a barrel and bury you in lead routine? Because I think, these are some great set pieces. I don't know. Rolls eyes loudly.
It actually starts quite a bit earlier for me. The fact that Superman rips an elevator off the side of a building in order to catch two stick-up artists is like, I get it. It's very cool looking. The kids will love it. But my God, $1 billion in property damage done to catch two thieves that he could have just like puffed super breath at to knock them out and then delivered them to the cops.
This is Joshua, this is Lex Luthor's city. He can pay for it.
Oh, now look, if they made that textual, I would love it. If Lex basically insured Metropolis, and that's why Superman was always happy to just break stuff, I don't hate it. Petty Superman is good, but that's not what's happening here.
Nah.
And you can tell because at the end, we have all of these bajillions of gallons of molten lead rolling around, and they just treat it like water instead of like molten lead. Like every single piece of explosive in that office, which, by the way, asterisk, why are there so many explosives in this office? Every single one of them would have gone off the minute molten lead touched them. Like heat plus chemical reaction goes boom. And then they don't until everyone's safe. And Lon is climbing up on a wooden desk that should be on fire, and they don't bother to do anything with fire. These action set pieces are kind of fun, but mostly stupid. And that's kind of how I feel about the secret identities. And this is not a great episode. It's not good.
Joshua, we gotta watch out for those microwave guns, okay? That's
okay, I actually love the guns.
The
I really like them.
They are my favorite part of this episode, outside of Lex, probably.
And legit, my favorite part of the microwave guns is when they're shooting them at Superman and he just tosses the log that they just shot. Like he just tosses it at them and they're like, oh no. And that's beautiful. That is a good thing. I like that. I also like the train. You know what? This is a good opportunity. Let's talk about Superman's power level in this episode, I think.
He can absorb lead. He absorbs lead, Joshua. Like you said, just like water.
Well, the thing is, in one scene, he is covered in lead, right? Like, which makes sense. He would be covered in molten lead and it would cool on him and then he would have a shell of lead around him. That actually is kind of cool and makes sense. But then he also, just grabs two human beings with hands that are encased in lead that is still way too hot for them, and flies them out. But I like seeing him that indestructible because that actually makes all the sense in the world to me.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I can give.
That's the only thing that treats the lead like lead. And that annoys me, but I like it on Superman. I also like him using super hearing when X-ray vision won't do.
Yes.
That's very cool too.
Yep. That is a nice touch. He's like, I couldn't see you, but I could hear you. Okay. All right. I can dig it. We haven't seen a ton of super hearing on the show yet, so I think that's a nice nod.
I also like that he's able to hold that train up, right? Like there's a minute when it not meshing with the tracks looks like it's going to slip out of his grip. And then he has to bear down. And obviously Superman never skips leg day. And he is just holding up the train. And that is a lot of strength. And I really like it. What did you think about that?
I think that Superman is a real Boy Scout because if only real Boy Scouts always get leg day. I'd see. I did think it was kind of cool. Again, this is him showcasing his powers and his strength in ways he hasn't done in this way before. A whole train's quite heavy. Lift it with the legs, I think, again, highlighting that he doesn't have to be in the air alone to do it. So, it's worth it. It's worth noting.
Now, I have a question for you because I'm honestly not remembering, and I also have a bunch of other, extra textual to this show stuff mixed up in my head. But have we said in this show where his costume came from? Like, we know that Martha sewed it, but have we said if she sews it out of, I'm just going to tip my hand, have we talked about baby blankets?
We have not talked about baby blankets yet, Joshua. So enlighten me. Tell me more about the baby blankets.
So in the very beginning not in the very beginning, but somewhere in the middle of the beginning of Superman, they established that his costume is just as indestructible as he is. And some of this was so he could stretch the cape out to catch stuff in it. And sometimes it was so he could throw the cape over people and it would protect them, which is what happens in this episode and what made me think about the question. The way that they made his outfit as indestructible as he is they declared that it was baby blankets. It was the blankets from Krypton that he was wrapped in when he was put in the rocket. And they basically unraveled them, and that those were the threads that Martha used to create his Superman outfit. And that his Superman outfit is actually very small. Like she originally made it for him when he was, and I shudder to say this, super baby, but because he is stronger than it is, it stretches with him. So if he takes it off, it actually goes way small. Little tiny. So that's why I asked, because in later years, that's not how they did it. I've mentioned John Byrne taking over after Crisis, and they wanted to give a little more realistic science fiction explanation for this. So what they described about Superman after Crisis is that anything that is very close to him shares in what they called his bioelectric aura. So the stuff that is skin tight on him is just as indestructible as he is, but that means his cape is not. It's all just earth cloth that's made stronger by him, and his cape is not skin tight, so it gets torn and ripped up and lost and stuff like that all the time.
Which explains all the cool torn cape imagery that we see in the history of the comics, because torn capes look, gritty.
Yeah, because things got real, right? Like if Superman's cape is not on him and is torn to shreds, something happened that got real, right? So seeing him use it as an umbrella to like protect Lana from the falling lead, I believe, it just made me go, have we established where this came from? Like, it's almost always Martha that makes it for him, but what's it made out of, and why is it as tough as he is? And it seems like they're kind of splitting the difference and just doing whatever looks cool on the show. But for our listeners, nothing but the best. They needed to know about baby blankets.
You know, Joshua, I think it's interesting that you tie it to Martha making that, because I would say in popular culture, at least in the films and television realm, I don't think Martha is the one who makes it. But no, that is a note about differences in the comics versus, you know, how it's portrayed in other media. Because I want to say Smallville, he gets it from the Fortress of Solitude. I believe and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't he also get it from the Fortress of Solitude in the original Superman 1978?
Yes. So comic book, it's almost always been Martha.
Yeah.
And it's apparently Martha in this show also because Lana says so.
Right.
But you're right. Most of the movies, they kind of skip that bit. I think that most of the movies feel like that would be too silly. Whereas for me, I think it's great. And there's actually a moment in Lois and Clark where Superman first appears in costume and he saves a kid, and the kid says, I really like your costume. And he looks him dead in the eye and says, thanks, my mom made it for me.
Oh, that's cute.
And I love it. I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that's that kind of Chris Reeves like sincerity and just coming across and just being like, and if you don't think that's cool, I don't know what to tell you because I'm Superman. So yeah, I think you're right. By and large, theatrical releases have decided that was too silly, but that's kind of always been the case almost everywhere else, including some other live action examples.
Okay, yeah. Good, noteworthy. And of course, Man of Steel also not his mom, but you know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did anybody think anything whimsical was ever going to happen in Man of Steel? Because I have bad news for you. It's not.
Amy Adams is great. All right. So Joshua, I just want to end this conversation by saying one more time, this episode's bad. It's bad. Skip it. Don't watch it. Don't even consider watching it. In fact, it's so bad. Joshua, I think I'm ready to move into alternate media recommendations.
And I can see why you would be, because we need to get this particular episode of the show out of our minds. Tell me, Caleb, how are you cleansing your brain from My Girl?
Well, see, firstly, I'm just going to, I have another one that I'm going to start with. I'll start with this one. If you totally disagree with Joshua and I, and you're like, you know what, I love this kind of story. I love the girl on girl fighting each other to compete for the man's attention. And I like the weird triangle between Lex and Superman and Lana. And you know, you like that. And you're like, those guys are wrong. I want to see more of that. You should go watch Smallville Season 6, Episode 16, Promise, which is also known as the episode in which Lex and Lana get married. And oh my God, it's so soap opera. I kind of still love it, but also it's if you watch it in a vacuum, it is the trashiest soap opera. Smallville, oh my God, faked pregnancy and all. It's so bad. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to see more of this episode, I think Smallville Season 6, Episode 16, Promise is the one for you. So I would call it an anti-recommendation, Joshua. If you agree with Joshua and I, yeah, don't watch that episode. And I mean, listen, there are lots of Smallville episodes to choose from. That just seemed like the easiest one.
Oh yeah, like that's the apotheosis of the whole thing. That's right. Just boiling it right down to its essence.
Wedding day with Lex and Lana. You're like, oh boy, this is the episode is just as crazy and kerfuffled as it sounds it would be. Positive action recommendation that I mentioned in the early episode that I hadn't considered, but if you really want to take a look at how the patriarchy functions and kind of creates this culture of girl on girl like competition, cutthroat. In the fashion industry, and kind of how that's the dehumanizing process that is, I would check out Nicholas Winding Refn's film The Neon Demon. It is definitely a dark, twisted film about the fashion industry and what it does to women as a whole and how it pits them against each other. It's going to make you real sad, and also it's very long, it's very slow paced, and it's not for everybody. But if you do want to see a movie about about how that whole phenomenon, how that culture works, I do think the Neon Demon is worth considering. Joshua, what do you have to recommend to cleanse your mind of this episode?
I am, in the interest of the health of our listeners, going hard the other direction. If you need to see something where women are brilliant and competent and working together, I suggest that you watch Ocean's 8. That's literally all I have to say. Everybody knows the Ocean's 11 deal now. There's a heist. They're all very clever. It's the reason we love Leverage. It's the reason we love at least one of the 4 Ocean's 11 movies. I'm counting the original also, but this one is an all woman-led cast.
It's a good cast,
just
too.
highly recommend it. Fantastic cast.
Yeah.
Very good movie, and you're going to see nothing but competency and teamwork. Could not recommend it more, especially after this hot mess. That about wraps it up for this animated discussion. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on Twitter. Caleb is at CMastersTalk, and I'm at Joshua Unruh, and the hashtag is animated discussion. Caleb, where else can people find you?
Well, I'm the editor-in-chief and contributor at the Cinematropolis, a website that specializes in in-depth film critique and thoughtful conversations on film. We publish analysis-driven essays on all types of films, and we also have a podcast called The Cinematic Schematic. You can find all those articles and the podcast at thecinematropolis.com, or if you're wanting to get into the podcast, you can find it wherever your podcasts are found.
Remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. Show your support by pledging at Patreon or by leaving a great review on Apple Podcasts to make it easier for more people to find us and join in the discussion.
And of course, the links to Patreon, Apple Podcasts, and our recommendations and Twitter are all easy to find in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us for this animated discussion, and we'll be back next time to talk about the new Batman Adventures episode, You Scratch My Back.
Until next time, look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's an animated discussion.